Okay, so this video is completely unscripted and kind of unprepared. So we're just gonna get into it, and it's kind of I promised to do this video, which is trading ranges, how to trade ranges, yeah. So I promised to do this, and I kind of want to go over this range that was set up back in September on Bitcoin, and as an example, just of how ranges form and how you kind of adjust your view on what the range is and then how to trade it, right? Because it's a very dynamic range that we're about to look at. So that way you can start to learn, okay, when and how do I adapt my range in order to have the actual range or a new range rather than sticking with this range that I thought formed. Meanwhile, price action has developed some new range or some new setup, and you're not really looking at that because you're still looking at your old range or an old piece of information that kind of isn't relevant anymore in comparison to what price action has currently formed up. So we're just going to play it out here. So we have this kind of sell off here and then a major sell off and then an initial low. So one of the rules with putting a range in is on a dump like this, on the initial low, you can presume that that's the bottom of the range. That's one of the rules I've set out in my other videos. And then the initial high will be the range high, right? So if we just play this out, you can see, okay, here's a range high for now. Let's presume this is a range. Already, just to give you guys some confluence here, I see this and this. I consider that an equal high. So we mark that an equal high, which means we kind of expect this liquidity to get taken at some point. Now, when you're looking at liquidity get taken, just as a quick tip, if the trend is down since here essentially, right? If the trend has been just predominantly down for over a month and a half, then it would be kind of odd to be looking at liquidity on the top side to get swept, because the magnet is kind of permanently or predominantly on the downside. Nonetheless, you could imagine this liquidity gets swept. That is what I was looking at the time, and you could even draw something like an order block here to see, and now you kind of get more of an insight into my trading style with this VRVP level. And then yeah, so that's just kind of some of the things I'd look at here. So that's kind of the initial range. And then you can even mark this as like an EQ, so middle of the range. But for now, we're going to leave that out. And we're just going to say this is the range. And then we're going to continue to look at price action play. Right, so here we get that sweep I was talking about. Right, straight into the VWAP level. Could be a good short. Boom, and now we're back at the bottom of the range. Now this is rather where I'd play it, right? When it does this on one candle, I wouldn't be too excited to be longing or shorting on this. So I would be looking for a breakdown, and now here would have been an insanely great long to play. Just risk to reward rise. Whether it pays off or not is a different question. Now we still have equal lows. Again, the predominant trend is still downwards because guess what? We haven't broken any structure, which is this order block I had up here, right? So this structure is still not broken, right? The structure is still to the downside. You could say here's a change of character. I do not consider that change of character quite yet. So we continue to the downside for now, or I have a downside bias. Boom. Wait, okay, boom, sweep, right? So what you see now is in ranges, when ranges form, I have spoken about this at length on multiple videos, is when you have the range high and range low established, which is the range low is the initial low put in by the drop. Range high is, I consider it this one, right? You tend to see sweeps of the bottom and top of the range, and you go back into the range. So here you have one sweep, and now you have a sweep of the bottom. So now both these equal highs and equal lows, which were liquidity levels, and you could even consider this more liquidity, have been taken out, including liquidity on this wick. So now all of it has been taken out, and you're back into this established range, right? This is when you really want to start looking for a long, right? So if price action now currently on a lower time frame, now this is 12 hours, so maybe I should go down a bit to give you guys a more. We'll go to 4. Now that this is a sweep and this is a sweep, what you want to look for is in my opinion, I would want to look for a reversal on an accumulation range. That's how I would see it. That's how I would define it. And then you kind of want to look for whatever your conditions may be to start finding along. So in my case, we have the VWAP levels. We didn't quite flip this VRVP level, but despite that, I might just look for something here into these VWAP levels and a retest of these kind of lows to establish a long position at the bottom of the range, like this, to the top, or maybe for a liquidity sweep back into this order block, right? So imagine you're looking for something like this, and you kind of continue to play out price action. I may or may not get filled here. So now you're at the top of the range. Now what you could decide to do at the top of the range is, of course, say, okay, this is still a range. Boom, let's place a short position right here, stop loss, maybe above here, right? And otherwise just above these highs. And you're targeting back to the lows. Or, again, you could define an EQ in the middle of this range right here. If you want the exact 50% of the range, then of course use the fib tool, but I more or less get it. Plus it's perfect confluence with this VRVP level. So then you could say, hey, actually, I'm just targeting this for a 3R. I think this is 2.6, right? And you enter somewhere in this to a short to the EQ, and then you take half profits or whatever your profit target is, and then back down to the lows, right? And that's how you could play it. So we continue to play this out. And we see a breakout of this range back into the range. Now you could start pullback trading and expect a breakout here. This would be very bullish for me. So you'd be looking something like this. Entry somewhere here, stop loss somewhere here, here, depending on where I'm targeting, of course. And then find an entry that way at the breakout of the range. Now, why are we looking for a breakout of the range? Now, of course, it's because we've already had liquidity sweep top side, liquidity sweep bottom side, and now we've had pretty strong bidding up into a breakout of this range. Additionally, of course, there's the support level here of 25K, more or less. But yeah, now what you might be looking at is something slightly different. And this is where I would start, well, maybe not quite yet, but this is where I would start being like, okay, we've been trading now, we're trading out of this range. So what are the next levels where I could actually identify a range or identify some type of new formation forming up, right? So you could easily, which I've done quite a few times, and it's pretty uncommon to do so, but it's just copy this range and paste this range and just kind of do this, right? And now you have the same range with the same exact type of levels on top of it. I've done this before. A lot of people don't like it, but if you look at my main Bitcoin chart, if you guys see the market outlooks, you can see that it's essentially the same range copied on top of each other, and it's indicated perfectly the levels to trade over the last few months. So we continue to play this out, and this is kind of where you start looking for what a new range is, right? So this would be an insanely nice long right here, somewhere here, with a stop loss somewhere under here. It looks amazing to me. Okay, well, it's getting wrecked. And there we go. And then now you can see that we're still technically within this range, but because of the deviation, so let's just remove this. Because of the sheer sum of deviations out of the range to the top side, I would be looking at what the next level is. That is the top of the range, and then what is the middle of the range now, because it's not quite the same anymore, right? The range has, so to speak, shifted, right? So if we remove all my drawings and we go unbiased and we say, okay, what are we looking at? I would still say this is the range low. Whoopsies. I would still say this is definitely my range low with a deviation. Undoubtable, right? But then for the rest, I would say this might be my range high, something like here. And then my EQ would be something like this. And then you have quarter ranges, which I use quite a bit, just because they're extra levels where you can say, okay, if there's a great RR position in confluence with an order block, then I would love to trade this. And then this would kind of be the 25% levels. So you have 50 100, 100, 25, 25, if that makes sense. Makes sense in my head. And now you can see if you have the quarter range levels, which used to be half range when you just had this bottom range, now you have the range on top. If you had an order block down here, whoopsie, let's draw this order block just with a normal tool, right? If you had an order block down here in confluence with the VRVP and in confluence with your quarter range level, you have an insanely nice trade right here with a stop loss to the top of the range. Probably for liquidity sweep is what I'd be looking at, so I'd be targeting maybe a bit above it, maybe into the order block I previously indicated up here, right? And that's kind of how you can pick levels based on this. I think I took something like this. I remember that's why I was constantly like, I know this was somewhere here was a good trade, so somewhere in this I took a long at the time, but that's not the point. Yeah, so that's kind of how you can switch your bias of what the range is. And now you can see if we continue to play this out, right, we kind of form resistance up here with a sweep. So again, I forgot this happened, but I guess it did. So now you have the sweep, and if you targeted that level slightly above this level, as indicated previously where I said maybe we're looking for a sweep, you would have had a nice stop loss where you banked another, what was that, maybe 0.5%. Nothing great, 1% or something, right? And then the order block up here still valid, right? And I'd still be looking at this order block ultimately, but currently you have an amazing range setup that you could be looking at, and you can see how it's interacting with the quarter range, right? You rip through it here, and here we're using it as support, and then here we might or might not be using it as resistance depending on the next price action formation. Let's look at that. Boom. Some resistance. We're interacting with it quite a bit, interacting with top of the range, rejected off top of the range, still rejecting, still rejecting, still rejecting. This is where I'd still be looking for longs, to be fair, because you're kind of like spending so much time in this area. So that's another thing with ranges. If you kind of have this range formation set up and you see price action is diddling near the top of a range or near a bottom of a range, and it's just like kind of just hovering there, and it's trying to make moves, but it's incapable of really breaking out to either side. But you can see it's in the lower half or higher half of the, or quarter of the range, then be on the outlook for a breakout to that side, right? So for an example, we kind of just had one, but again, you have a range kind of like this, and I'm not going to draw the top level, it's just the EQ, right? So we're just EQ light blue, and you come in with price action, you set the initial low, you mark that, boom, you set the initial high. Now it's all wrong because I instantly, there you go, you set the initial high, and price action does something like this. It sweeps this and then does this at this point. So let's redraw this just to make it perfect for you guys, right? It does this, sweeps the highs, comes down here and does this. At this point, I'd be looking, okay, we're retesting this bottom a lot, and we're spending a lot of time in the lower half of the range, right? Top half, bottom half. At that point, I'd be saying, okay, let's see if we can find something on a breakdown. Either way, you could also expect, like the previous example of actual Bitcoin chart, where we just see this reconquer, and of course then I'd be looking, or reconquer is a weird way to put it, but reclaim, and at that point I'd be looking of course for a long, because then this was just a buildup of suspense to get this liquidity sweep in my eyes, before we reclaim that, place a long, reclaim this possibly, and since this has already been sweeped, we kind of have free reign to go to the top side. I hope that makes sense, right? So now you can see, in my opinion, we're spending all this time up here, and I would say that means we want to break out to that side, since bulls are in control and bears are unable to, from the top of this range, be able to push price action down. So that would be my bias currently, and of course it's hindsight, so I kind of know what happened here. So again, when I say what I just said, that doesn't mean we're gonna go straight from where I said that up and to fucking 100K. It just means my bias at this point and currently still is to the upside, since we're still in the top half of this range, right? Of this whole range rather, and this is the top half, right? So now you can kind of maybe better understand why I said what I said. And there we go. And if you had it long from somewhere here still, or maybe you relonged, then from the half, from the EQ, then now you'd have into this order block, you'd have a great trade of, I don't know, 10, 20%, whatever that is, 10%. And of course, we rip much further. That is kind of how I would set up a range and shift bias of any given range. So even though in the beginning, again, right, my range was very simple, and it was simply, you know, back here. Where's the replay? Boom. Anywhere back here, let alone back here, my range was very simple, right? And as we play it out, my range bias shifts of, okay, that's a liquidity sweep. That might be a nice long position. I see we diddling below the EQ, which means I kind of find weakness, and I see these equal lows, so I expect that to get taken by liquidity. Boom, that gets taken. I see this as a deviation. I would be looking for a long once we retest the bottom of the range. Boom, retest the top. We can look for shorts here if we so please. Boom, would have been stopped out of those shorts. That's fine. EQ, nice. This might be where I want to take a long, and because the order block, EQ, etc. Now we're looking at it, and we're seeing, okay, now we're spending we're starting to spend more time above this range, so maybe start shifting my bias. We are again spending time above this range, okay, right? At this point, I would have likely already marked these highs. I probably wouldn't mark the mid-level, but I would have marked these as like, okay, let's see what this is about. Just because, yeah, you know, this is a high that I'd be looking at liquidity-wise, etc. So I'd be looking, what if this is the new range formation? Boom, we see this. I see a deviation. I try to find a short on the lower time frame, on the hourly or something up there. Boom, we play it out. That would have been an insanely nice short, right? Stop loss above here, of course. Boom, boom, boom. Now I'd definitely be marking the quarter range. It would have been marked for sure. This is a key level. And you see us rip through, etc. And now it's kind of like you can definitely tell, okay, the range structure is broken. We've broken out of the range. And with this insane strength on this candle, you might want to find a long position somewhat like this as a breakout trade. Right, so that's essentially how you would play a range, or identify a range and shift bias on the range and look for levels within the range, etc., etc. So it's a pleasure. If you're looking to trade and you're not at a broker, you don't really fuck with your broker, or there's low liquidity and you are trading with a nice size and you want the best broker out there, then of course go to Bybit. The link, my referral link, is in the bio, and anything, of course, that you guys can do to support my channel and support me is always appreciated. Furthermore, boomish.org, bunch of articles on there about VRVP, about VWAP, and furthermore, yeah, just videos. I have video versions of all the articles. So if it comes down to it, there's more than enough education on this channel to really understand how I trade and what I look at while I'm trading. I'm trying to pump out more videos going into 2024. I'm currently calming down on trading. I still have a bunch of open positions and I'm still trading, but in regards to sharing my exact trades, I have cooled it down as of right now. So yeah, that's essentially it. It's a pleasure, and I'll see you guys around.